Hey, good evening. Tonight is episode 10. These two events happened on different occasions in a place called Warner Hot Springs, which is kind of in the back country of San Diego County. And this place, when we were there, we had a big group of friends, and we all had kids the same age, and the kids were getting a little older. And we did things like go camping as a group. And Warner Springs had a camping area, which we used one time. It was a resort. It had started out being in the 1800s, and it was not a stagecoach. Well, 1800s, I don't know. Yeah, there probably were still stagecoaches back then, but anyway, a very amazing history. Indians live there. There's a huge hot springs there. It moves like 200,000 gallons of water every day. Warner Springs in the 1920s became a kind of a resort, but back then it was even farther out into nowhere. And there were a lot of famous people who came there at different times, but it had a lot of trouble because it was so far out that it really always has struggled to remain solvent as a business. And indeed, I just looked it up today, and it closed 10 years ago and is not open at the moment as far as I can tell. So at the time, they were selling memberships, and a couple of our friends bought memberships. And so we went out there on many occasions. And I didn't know anything about hauntings or anything like that out there. Nobody talked about that. My husband also was a musician. That was his love, but he also was a regional manager for a big company because that's what paid the bills for a family of 5. So he and his band would go out to Warner Springs and play music out there. And so on this particular occasion, there were all different kinds of rooms, and there was also 2 huge almost Olympic-sized pools. One was hot and one was cold. They were right next to each other, and that was really fun for the kids. So on this particular occasion, my husband was playing music out there, and so it was just our family, and they gave us one of the 1920s casitas to stay in. There was a kind of a hotel section, and there were newer rooms on one side, and these casitas were the original rooms. And so this particular little casita, and probably all of them, were built in the 1920s. So we arrived and got in, went to the casita, and it was 2 rooms, but there was the room that you walked into, which had a queen-size bed, and then sort of the next room over, which was only separated by an arch, was a room that had 2 single beds and then a small bed on one side. And that's where the kids were going to sleep. And my husband and I, where we were sleeping, was you open the door, and right just as you walk in, there's a bed to the right. And then straight ahead was a bathroom. So we did the thing, had dinner, went to the pool, did all the things that we normally do there. And actually, this was the last time that we were there. And so that night, we all got ready, settled down to go to sleep. And we turned the lights off, and there was a rustling noise in the bathroom. And I thought, I wonder what that is. And at first I tried to ignore it, and it just kept happening. It sounded like something in the trash can, it's like the crinkling, the rattling of, not rattling, but the sound of a little a little mouse or something in the wastebasket. So I got up and went into the bathroom and looked, and there was absolutely nothing on the floor. There was a wastebasket, but there was no bag inside of it. Picked it up, looked around, looked in the cupboards, looked in the bathtub, could find nothing. Went back to bed. Again, rattling in the bathroom. I thought, this mouse, there must be a mouse in there. Go back in there, look around, do the same things. Nope, no mouse poop, no nothing. That happened several times. And finally I said, all right, well, I don't know what it is, and I'm just gonna go to sleep. So we went to sleep, and I didn't think about it the next day, but it either stopped or we were asleep, and so we didn't hear it. I don't know. Well, the next day, we were talking about that, and my daughter, who was sleeping in one of the twin beds up again in the corner, told me that she had awakened in the middle of the night, and there was a man sort of standing between her bed and her sister's bed, kind of leaning over her sister's bed. And I said, well, what did he look like, honey? Well, he had on a plaid shirt, and it was kind of red, and he had a hat on, and I could see through him. And she said it really scared me, and I was like, yeah, well, that would scare me too. I did not have that experience, but she did. Same room, same night, and so that was my ghost story for that particular visit. And I guess the next day we were out at the pool, and I was telling people that there was a ghost in that room. There was not only the rattling in the bathroom, but then the apparition overnight. And we didn't ever go back there. My husband never did music there again. And I wonder if we weren't invited back because somebody heard that I was telling people that that room was haunted. I don't know that. I have nothing to back that up. It just seemed at the time, the circumstances. I think maybe he called and they said no, they weren't gonna book that him anymore there. Or, I mean, it wasn't like, no, we're not having you back. It was just kind of funny. They just kind of dropped it, and they never played music there again. So I don't know what happened with that. And then the second unusual thing that happened there was a horseback riding area, which we liked for the kids when they were older, something for them to do. And one of the ladies that usually went with us and all the families to go out to Warner Springs, we decided we were going to do an overnight. We're just going to go girls weekend kind of thing. So we went out to Warner Springs and stayed the night, and we got there early. And so the idea was that we were going to go. There's a little antique chapel out there, a little Catholic chapel, which I'd been inside of. It was open during the day, and we decided we were going to go in there and sit and meditate and just kind of feel the peace. And so we just went in and sat down, and in the middle, there was a lectern at the top, and there was this huge Bible on the lectern, and it was open. I mean, a huge Bible, like 14 inches long, and it was very large when it was open. And there was nobody else in there but us. It was a small chapel. And so we both sat down, and we're being quiet and meditating. And I couldn't meditate because I kept hearing, with my eyes closed, I was hearing the pages of that Bible turn. I could hear the turning of the pages. So I'd open my eyes and look. Nothing was happening. And then there were scratches up on the ceiling on the roof, and I thought, oh, there must be squirrels out there or something, but I hadn't seen any squirrels. And then we hear, and we both heard the same thing. We heard somebody on a horse ride up to the side of the chapel, come around to the front, get off the horse, and we're waiting for somebody to walk through the door, and nobody did. So I said, okay, I'm going to go out and look. So I go outside. There's absolutely no horse riders anywhere around. It was all dirt around the chapel. There were no squirrels on the roof, and we both heard all of this. So I'm assuming that this was some kind of like a memory from the past. Sometimes when you're in places everything's quiet, you can kind of, like, these things happen so often there that it's almost like you hear an echo or something from the past. But that was a very unusual experience, and like most experiences, I have these experiences and then they never happen again. It's not like they keep going on, but it was just another really kind of cool, kind of fun experience, really. It wasn't scary. It was sunlight outside, but I thought that it was really pretty interesting. So those are my stories about Warner Hot Springs. And thank you very much for listening. And please like and subscribe. And God bless.